I'm going to explain everything you need to know about the modern Yu-Gi-Oh card game with just 3 cards. Card number 1 is Pot of Greed. Not only so I can put it in the thumbnail, but also because it teaches a valuable lesson. Pot of Greed is a card with a deceptively simple effect. Draw 2 cards. The irony of which is that Pot of Greed is one of the most powerful cards ever printed in the context of the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. Perhaps the most defining feature of Yu-Gi-Oh compared to other popular TCGs like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, or Hearthstone is Yu-Gi-Oh's lack of a universal resource system. In Yu-Gi-Oh, over the course of a turn, you can activate as many cards as you have available. There is no mana, there is no energy. In fact, one of the biggest criticisms of the modern Yu-Gi-Oh game are focused around massive first-turn combos where a player goes through a large chunk of their deck, summons around about 15 monsters, and wastes about 20 minutes of your life. This is how Yu-Gi-Oh has garnered its reputation for massive boards and wombo combos. The amount of cards in your hand, essentially, is the main resource available to a duelist. Pot of Greed turns your 5-card starting hand into a 6-card starting hand, unless you draw into another Pot of Greed, which makes it a 7-card starting hand. Look no further than Pot of Greed's modern, playable retrain, Pot of Desires, which forces you to banish the top 10 cards of your deck face down to draw 2 cards, and has a hard, you can only activate 1 Pot of Desires per turn, to fix the Pot of Greed into Pot of Greed effect. Card advantage is so important that it is a major metric in determining a strategy's strength, often measuring power levels in terms of plussing, where the more cards you generate, the better. Number 2, Nibiru the Primal Being. Nibiru here is chosen to represent one of the strongest card factions in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, that being the Hand Trap. With Yu-Gi-Oh shifting towards long combos, generating tons of advantage while setting up full boards of disruption, the duelist going first in a duel has a huge advantage. Meanwhile, the going second player has to watch and twiddle their thumbs while they fall further and further behind. Enter in the Hand Trap, like Nibiru the Primal Being. Nibiru has the effect that, during the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summoned 5 or more monsters this turn, quick effect, you contribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand, then special summon 1 Primal Being token to your opponent's field. Essentially, if your opponent decides to foolishly combo off, you can slam a Nibiru down and clear out their entire board, nullifying all the monster presence they've accumulated. Cards like Nibiru exist as a personal defense weapon for the duelist going second, and Nibiru is hardly the only one. Duelists often aim to have anywhere from 8 to 20 of these things in their deck, keeping in mind that the going first player can also use them to interrupt their opponents. And since they activate immediately from the hand, a unique gameplay quirk emerges where duelists often tailor their combos and strategies to avoid running headfirst into these buzzsaw effects. The third and final card on this list is Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. This card represents the absolute power level of the modern Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. To remind you, Red Eye's Dark Dragoon has the combination of effects, cannot be destroyed by card effects. Neither player can target this card with card effects. During your main phase, you can destroy 1 monster your opponent controls, and if you do, burn your opponent for that monster's attack, with the potential ability to use that effect multiple times per turn. Also, once per turn, when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can discard 1 card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Oh, and this card gains 1000 attack. If after reading this card you have to clean the barf off your screen, then you're not suited for the horrors that lie within the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. Perhaps most notable is Dragoon's negation effect, which has become a staple of modern Yu-Gi-Oh card design. With clever script writing, I've set the scene where a going first duelist aims to set up a board with many of these monsters to interrupt the going second player when it's their turn to combo off. Additionally, summoning Dragoon and other negations like Appaloosa, Bow the Goddess can help insulate your board from powerful cards like the aforementioned Nibiru. As crazy it may seem, interaction still rules this gonzo game, with terms like bouncing, spinning, destroying, banishing, and tributing all being keywords for how you can mess with your opponent. Oh, and people love to bicker whether this card is actually good in the context of the modern game, which brings me to the ban list, or Christmas for Yu-Gi-Oh players, as duelists flock to their favorite forums and YouTube videos to get live reactions. The ban list is the main balancing metric for Yu-Gi-Oh, as we all know Konami isn't balancing before they release their cards, and it is the driving force of metagame shifts, as well as the promotion of new decks over the old. After all, in a game with no rotation, I may have just shown you 3 cards, but eventually you're gonna have to read them all.